What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to a model airplane review. It's your host Ray. In today's video, I'll be reviewing the Gemini 200 Azul Airlines Airbus A321NEO. In this video, I'll talk about the box, then the model itself, and at the end of the video, I'll give my personal opinion about what I think of the model and whether or not I recommend it to other collectors. Starting off with the box is a standard issue Gemini 200 narrow body box at 23 centimeters lengthwise and height-wise, and 8 centimeters wide. I'll show you around the box now. So here's the front, bottom. Down here, I'd like to point out that a new feature with Gemini 200 boxes is instead of using a pin or brad fastener system or a button system, whatever it is down here, they switched over to a magnetic system. So the flap actually attaches to the box through a magnet, making storage a little bit easier, and I mean, that's just pretty cool. Here's the right side, top, left side, and the back side. Take a moment to read this if you'd like to. Down here, you can see that this was a 2023 release. Once you open up the box, you get the model fully assembled, painted, and ready to go, and a flimsy display stand. This display stand is, as you can tell, disproportionately small compared to the size of the model. And keep in mind, this is actually a heavy model aircraft going onto a flimsy display stand. This is the included one, at least. And I don't really recommend using this display stand if you want to display this model on a display stand. Instead, I suggest you buy the Gemini Jet's chrome display stand or simulated wood display stand. Those are far more reliable and durable options for a display stand, because if you were to display it on this one, first off, it might not even fit into the model. I'll actually test that out right now. Okay, yeah, so it barely fits into the model, and you can see there it holds the model, but I mean, it's just still a very small support. So with this one, you do run a higher risk of having the model fall over and suffering catastrophic damage. So get a different display stand if you want to display this model on a stand. And here's the model itself. I'm going to give you a quick 360 before I begin my review. So the fuselage length for this model is 23 centimeters, wingspan is 17.5 centimeters, and it's about 7 centimeters tall. Pretty big and accurate to 1:200 scale. This model is made primarily out of die-cast metal, and like I mentioned earlier, it is pretty heavy for its size as a result. Starting up the review with the fuselage, here is the nose section. Now, historically on Gemini 200's, Airbus A321s, the nose shape has been pretty atrocious. However, on this model, while it's not the most accurate, or actually it seems pretty solid for this mold, it's still not the most accurate in the world, but it's better than usual, so that's definitely a nice thing to see. I don't think the mold has changed or anything, but at least the nose shape is a little bit better. As you can see, though, the nose cone printing here is a little bit finicky. It does kind of have a little bit of an issue there. We'll explore that later when I show the front of the aircraft later in the video. But nose shape is decent. Not the best, not the worst. As you can see up here, we got plenty of printed detail. We've got the Azul logo with the shape of the country of Brazil, and that's where this airline is from, presumably. I got a title here. It says, I think that is Blue Flag. I'm not 100% sure. I'm just using my loose knowledge of Spanish. But as we move down the aircraft, you can see we've got a great variety of painted and printed detail. Printed detail looks good, painted detail not so much, and I'll explain why in a moment. This is actually something that I would discuss more towards the top of the aircraft, because this is where the issue that I'm referring to is. So you can see on the yellow here, you can see two distinct layers of yellow application here. So you can tell that the yellow is painted on top of the blue. That's fine. However, what I don't like is the different shades of yellow. So some areas received more layering than others, leading to slight variations in the color of the yellow. Gemini has been doing this recently, and I really am not a fan of it. I understand that this is definitely a harder aircraft to produce, given the wide range of colors and the navy blue being vastly different from the yellow, but still, it would have been nice to see a bit more effort put into that. So that's one of my main issues with this model. You can clearly see where the yellow was applied. But aside from that, as we move down to the rear section of the aircraft, everything else seems to be good. And that's quite kind of interesting. Usually I see the Airbus A321NEO title at the front of the plane, but I guess it's back here. Here's the vertical stabilizer. This looks pretty good. We got molded detail for the rudder. That looks solid. We got the Azul logo here. It looks pretty good. I do notice a little bit of a stain there, or might be a little bit of a chip. Small printing inconsistency there, nothing too crazy. The vertical stabilizer is kind of off at an angle with respect to the fuselage instead of being straight up. I'm pretty sure that's not right. It shouldn't be at this angle, so the vertical stabilizer at the top here isn't correctly shaped. All right, so here's a look at the other side. Other side looks pretty good too, no complaints. I really don't notice anything else that's necessarily wrong, so let's continue. All right, so we'll move down to the right side of the aircraft. The right side of the aircraft, it's basically the same as the left side. It has the same yellow paint application issue there, so I'm not going to harp over it again. But aside from that, everything else seems to be relatively good, so I won't complain. Moving on to the wings, here is the wing. There's lots of detail up here. As you can see, we got all sorts of painted, printed, and molded detail. Painted detail in the form of the different grays on the control surfaces. These look pretty good. Control surfaces are clearly defined. That's for the molded detail. That looks good. Printed detail seems to be accurate and good as well, so I won't complain. The wings are pretty solid up here. Under the wings, there's not very much. There is the aircraft's registration, though. That goes from the bottom of the right wing up to the left wing. This is the bottom of the right wing. And then here's the rest of the registration on the bottom of the left wing. So pretty solid on the wings. I won't complain. Everything seems to be in check. As for the winglets, or I mean the sharklets, these are pretty nicely shaped. I do notice that the silver here okay, something weird happened with the silver there, because there's it's supposed to go up farther on the sharklet, and you can see some of the blue kind of poking through the silver there. So something went wrong with the application of the silver, and it's a little bit too thick on this side too. So yeah, paint application on the sharklet isn't really good, but the shape is. The shape is good, and the angle which they're sitting at is pretty good. I'll explore that more in detail later. But yeah, the shape is good, just the paint application was a bit finicky on that one. On this one, it seems to be okay, so that is good to see. Moving on to the horizontal stabilizers, these look pretty good. Decent amount of detail on there, won't complain. They seem to be mounted correctly as well, so pretty solid work back here. As for the APU is just the flat part here with a little bit of a dent there, or a little bit of a protrusion there. Nothing too detailed, but again, I don't expect much back here. And here is the bottom. There's the APU access doors. While we're at the bottom here, I do want to show you the paint here, the green and yellow and then going to the blue again. This is all aligned, which is kind of impressive because in general, model manufacturers don't usually get perfect alignment, but this seems pretty good. So at least they got the alignment right, just the paint application was a bit finicky. All right, now for a part I won't complain about, the engines. I love the engines of this model. Just kidding, I still have to complain a bit. All right, so yeah, this engine appears to be bent a little bit upwards, looks like. Slightly, very slightly, hard to see, but it is kind of that way. But aside from that, detail on this is really good. All sorts of different metallic shades across the exhaust nozzle and the pylon, all of which look really nice. And my favorite part, the fan blades and the spinner spiral, these look fantastic. They do spin. They are a little bit stiff on this model, but they do spin, and the spinner spiral appears to be dead centered too, so very good job on Gemini for doing that. As for everything else in the engine, detail seems to be pretty good. Same deal with the right engine. No issues on the right engine. The right engine is actually positioned correctly. It's not bent or anything. So yeah, very solid job on the engines from Gemini. This is something that I do genuinely appreciate. So moving on to aerial details, this model features antennas and 3D lights. This model does not feature sat domes because that is accurate to the aircraft. So this antenna at the front here, it's a large, I think it's a UHF or VHF antenna, I'm not sure. It's just an antenna. It is kind of bent off, it is kind of set off in an angle, and that's an issue I can fix, but it is kind of irritating to see that. And as you can see, those antennas towards the rear of the aircraft, this one here is kind of angled off to the side as well. Again, I can fix that, but something to be noted. And up here, you can also see the yellow paint application issue I was mentioning earlier. You can see that much more clear. I do see a blue stain on this antenna. I can't really scratch that off with my fingernails, so not sure what happened there. And last but not least, we got this small antenna in the rear here. This looks pretty solid. On the bottom of the aircraft, we've got all sorts of antennas. We've got a very small one right here, very sharp too, so be careful. Appears to be kind of angled, but it's a very small part, so I won't... The fact that it's on the model is more than enough for me. That's how low my standard for Gemini has gotten these days, because they're not really that impressive. Well, that's kind of weird. I'm not sure if you guys can see, but there's a little bit of a weird finish on the bottom of the fuselage there. I guess I have to just wipe away some residue. There you go. All right, so we got a 3D light right here. All sorts of detail down here. Look at all that printed detail. Another small antenna, another larger antenna, and at the very back of the aircraft, we've got a small antenna here as well. I forgot to point out the 3D light at the top of the aircraft. We've got one right in the middle. So far, everything looks pretty good. Just a few alignment issues and imperfections here and there that I can fix. So aerial details are okay. Right, so moving on to the landing gear. The main landing gear on this model are decent. They're permanently extended. And something I did notice is that the wheels are kind of twisted. And let me kind of illustrate that. You can see that they're not exactly aligned with the center of the aircraft. They're kind of off at an angle. Again, I can fix this, but damn, how hard is it to get how hard is it to get a landing gear position correctly? God dang it, Gemini. You're making me lose my patience. All right, but the wheels do roll relatively smoothly, so I won't complain. And they're sturdy. They hold the model as they should. And here's the nose gear. As you can see, it does swivel and pivot to rotate within a very limited range, a bit more on one side than the other, and the wheel rolls here too. So landing gear is solid, they're just permanently extended. Wait a minute, this can't be. All right, so now it's time for the staring contest at the front of the aircraft. So here, let's look at the nose cone here. Everything seems to be okay, so I guess that might have just been me going crazy with the ink printing inconsistency earlier. But yeah, look at the engine clearance looks good, wing flex looks very good. Vertical stabilizer seems to be straight up. As you can see, that antenna is twisted, but I'll fix that. But what I was kind of confused about is the gear balance seems to be okay, and the cockpit window printing is symmetrical. That's very surprising from Gemini and a lot of other companies these days, but mostly Gemini. So yeah, pretty solid work with the cockpit window printing. And I forgot to point this out earlier, but you can see that this cockpit strangely has the raccoon mask. It's very hard to see, but it does have the raccoon mask. Looks really cool nonetheless. I love raccoon masks. So yeah, very nice addition there. And with that comes the end of my review. Now time for my personal opinion and recommendation. Well, I ordered this with another model, and that other model it had all sorts of issues. So I wasn't really holding a high head with this one. However, this one is solid. It does have small imperfections like the paint application on the sharklet, and something that's probably going to be applicable to the entire batch is the yellow paint application issues. But again, those are imperfections, a bit more than I'd like to see those. So can't do much about them, but aside from that, quality control and shapes and everything were pretty good. So therefore, I do recommend this model to anyone who wants it. It's a beautiful aircraft, I won't lie. I love the livery. It looks pretty cool. Just, yeah, there's a few imperfections with this model, and if you're willing to tolerate those, then I think you'll be just fine with this model. Well, that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Feel free to check out my channel for more aerospace content. I always love channel traffic. And that's all I've got for you guys today. Stay safe, happy collecting. See you next time.